Okay, good evening. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. Will you please rise with me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please remain standing. As most of you know, we remember those members of our community who've passed since our last meeting. And unfortunately, there have been several since our last meeting. We've lost Sophie Janos, longtime resident of North Tarrytown in Sleepy Hollow at the age of 100. John Kane of Hunter Avenue at 78 years of age. Joseph Radulich, also longtime resident of North Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow at the age of 83. Joaquin Pastilla, longtime North Tarrytowner as well at the age of 89. Francis Bustamante, also longtime North Tarrytowner at the age of 87. And very sadly, Andrew Martin, from Weber Park at the age of 21. Our thoughts are with their families and with their friends. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, we're going to kick things off with an update this evening on our comprehensive plan and LWRP work. As you know, we've been working for many months now to update both of those important documents. And we've been working with folks from BFJ, and they're going to give us a brief report on some of that progress this evening.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. As a recap, the village held the public hearing on the comprehensive plan over a series of 4 evenings. Very well attended. Lots of residents came out. Some of them came out for multiple, maybe all 4, and gave their comments and their input. Very helpful to us and hopefully to the trustees as well. The verbal portion of the public hearing has been closed in late June, and the written comment period remains open until the next Tuesday, July 23rd. Is the date. So what we've been doing in our office is compiling all the verbal comments and the written comments that we've gotten so far. And we gave you all, I hope a brief memo. It's about 10 pages. We are not going to go through that memo tonight, but we are going to touch on some of the kind of big items. So I'll just dive right in. I think probably the issue that we heard the most about, the most number of commenters, was the marina, and there were various concerns raised about the potential for a commercial marina in the area of Horan's Landing, and some were in favor, but I think more were probably concerned about that. And so we had suggested perhaps softening that language and really focusing on the existing pier that's there now that has been used for construction activities for the bridge. And when that is over, that bridge, or that pier, will become available, and that's what makes sense to look at perhaps some public marina type uses, not a commercial marina, not anything sort of substantial. And then the rest of that area we think will probably remain kayaking, non-motorized boating. So we can work on some revised language for that. Another big one came on Historic Hudson Valley. They were concerned about it was a concept, one of several concepts that were shown for intersections in the village, including along Route 9. And this particular one was on the Broadway-Pecanico intersection, and the concept that was shown basically closed one of their driveways and some reconfiguration. They were very concerned about the impact of their operations, and we've talked a little bit with the mayor about that and some tweaks that we can make to, I think, satisfy Historic Hudson Valley's concerns and also still get some improvements at that intersection that get at pedestrian safety, which we think are needed. So we'll make some text and visual changes there. There were a number of people who spoke about just sort of generalized bike and pedestrian improvements. We think and we hope, if you've read the plan, that you can see that those kind of run through, and that there are a number of improvements that are recommended really throughout the village, but in particular the downtown area, to improve pedestrian safety, improve bikeability, really for all users. And so we think a lot of these have been addressed already. We'll go through and make sure that the language is strong enough, and if there are areas where we feel like we can make a tweak or two, we'll do that and make sure that we fully address that. But we've done our jobs. We hope that it's a pretty strong plan in terms of bike and pedestrian safety. Similarly, a number of commenters at the public hearing talked about sustainability. There seemed to be a lot of interest in very tangible, action-oriented items. There's a lot of discussion about waste, emissions. People are concerned, and we think that we've covered a lot of these. And one of the recommendations that's in the plan already is to do a climate action plan. And we think at that point is when the village can really get into some of these detailed recommendations. A lot of them do require further study. But again, we can look at whether there are opportunities to make some tweaks to the text to make clear the types of things we're looking at without getting into, we've already decided and we've already done all the studies that are required. We can look at the types of strategies that the village could consider in a climate action plan or sustainability plan. And I believe those are kind of the big items. Did you have anything else, Simon?
Yeah, those are the big items. I just want to add, we heard a lot of comments from a lot of people in the community over the course of the 4 meetings, and also written comments. A lot of great ideas, a lot of changes that might not rise to the level of these sort of more substantial policy calls.
Right.
But there are quite a few changes that we've suggested making, points of fact, or some other more minor policy calls that are still important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's in the memo that we gave to you, and those are edits that we expect
Can I ask
to
you,
make. Sure.
in the meetings, do you take attendance and also know their neighborhoods in which they come from? Do you do any, because when you say a lot, I hear you, but is there any more statistics behind that?
We did, when people spoke, they generally gave their names. There were, I think, a couple folks who didn't, so as I was taking notes,
Okay, so
I
it
wrote down their
wasn't attendance
names.
coming in.
No.
No, it was
right.
basically when they came to the microphone and stated their name.
Okay.
We were writing down, and Simon,
Okay.
who was here without me, writing down as best we could to understand who they were. We didn't always know what neighborhood they live in, or
Sure,
that kind of thing.
sure. And how many do you think in average were in attendance?
I think I've got these here, so I can tell you exactly how many spoke in total. If you give me just one moment.
Sure.
Okay. So on the first night, there were. That's not the first one. That's the first one. On the first night, there were 18. The second night, there were, I believe, 7, if I'm looking at these in the right order. The third, there were, I think, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Are you adding these up in your head?
It's between 30 and 35.
And the final one, there were 5.
And some of these were repeats. Some
Some-
people came multiple times, and we also got about half a dozen written comments. I think most of them had also come in person, and then they reiterated their comments in writing as well. And we've kept all of those for the record. Yeah. So our plan going forward is to take all of these comments and changes that we've suggested and given to you. As Simon said, there are a lot of them that are minor that we haven't gone through tonight that we think are fairly straightforward, but we will give you the change pages that incorporate these. If we get any additional comments in the next week, either they'll come to the village or they'll come to us, and we'll share and make sure that we have them all. And if there's anything new, we can make further adjustments as necessary. I think our next step in the process would be giving you the complete set of the change pages, give you a chance to look at the language, make sure you're comfortable with it. And I think then once you are comfortable with it, we would share that with the public so that they're aware of the changes that are being proposed to make. And then we would move toward accepting those changes and adopting the plan. I think probably targeting a Labor Day timeline.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of ballpark to think about it. And just so the public understands, there's been a fair amount of back and forth between you guys and us, or between the trustees and BFJ, over these past several months as we've seen things in the draft document. And of course, we're all reading the same draft document. So we have pointed out some things, it's the wrong diagram, or the name is misspelled, and, you know, some minor stuff like that, and some other areas where we are looking for more emphasis on a particular subject, or no emphasis in some cases on a subject. And so there's been a lot of work, a lot of back and forth between us and and our consultants on this. And I think what's important to realize is for the folks who are saying, how come my change has not been adopted yet? And it's like, we haven't adopted any of them. We have a draft. We haven't adopted that. It's simply a draft. And what we're going to do is put out a document, not a new draft, because that would probably require another public hearing. So we'd have to do the announcement, we'd have to wait, and all the rest of it. We're just going to put out a document that says, here's what we, as the 7 of us, here's what we want to see adopted in this. Here's what our plan is. So there's a document, you can take that, page numbers, you can go through and say, oh, this was eliminated, this was added, whatever those things may be. And the idea is to keep the public hearing open for written comments after that document goes out publicly, so that people have an opportunity to look at that and then comment on it. It's like, oh, good, I'm good with this, or I'm still not good with it, whatever it is. So the only real fair way to do this, I think, is to make sure that you have an opportunity to see what it is that we have chosen to do in the way of making changes in this draft. So hopefully we can get that out quickly, and folks will have some time to then review it and review the draft, and then we'd move on from there. One of the things that I would just remind people about is the LWRP. There's been a lot of focus on the comprehensive plan and not as much focus on that. So the public hearing is still open for written comments, and I'm going to ask the trustees later on this evening to extend the public hearing for written comments, just to make sure that we don't miss the date for next week. And so if you have any additional comments, please send them in. We've still been receiving them over the last several days, so we'll do that.
So, something that I'd like to point out that I noticed on the comments, to your point, Ken, where, you know, somebody might say, well, what about my comment, or why wasn't it adopted? Some of them were also what I recognized as statements that were probably more appropriate when we start looking at the implementation, the strategy point. So while you don't see it necessarily as a change or an effect in the actual document that we're adopting, they are being considered as we're rolling out the committees because of the way in which it was framed. And so we're also being very mindful of teasing that out as well, and I think that's just an important point to make, because there are a lot of very distinctions as to where it falls into the plan, if I may.
It's a good point. There are some changes that were recommended that are at maybe a finer level of detail than you would necessarily see in a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
That maybe deserve a little bit more discussion. Something that should be in a climate action plan that, for example, that really deserves its own process. So while we've made or recommended making a lot of changes, we haven't necessarily recommended making all of them. It doesn't mean they're bad ideas. It just means
Absolutely.
that they might,
and I
they
think
might
that's
show
a
up in other
really
places.
very important point because of the detail. Thank you.
And as long as the comprehensive plan and the LWRP have set those up and don't prevent that future study and further analysis, then it's fine. You don't really need to get into that level of detail. And I think, just to reiterate the mayor's point, you won't have seen any of these changes. We haven't physically made the changes yet. Because you really can't until at least the verbal portion of the public hearing has closed, so you actually know what all you got. If you were to make the changes sort of on a rolling basis, you would never stop. So just the way that the state has set up the public hearing process for comprehensive plan, that's kind of the process that we take. So luckily we are at a point now where we can start to collect all the comments and make those recommended changes. So that'll be the next step.
Any other questions? Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Look
you very
forward
much
to
for your work.
finishing this up.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, next up, we have a warrant which was distributed
Oh.
earlier, and it is in the amount of $513,081.45. If you have any questions on the warrant, please direct them to the treasurer.
Sarah, I have one question.
Sure.
There was, I'm not sure if you know, but there's like a $90,000 amount for Douglas Park Playground. Was that, is that the full budget for the park? or-
Yes,
Okay, because, yeah, I just didn't remember it being that amount.
yeah, that's
Okay.
how much it was.
Okay.
And where in DeVries Park was the fence repaired? Just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Is it-
Matt would know exactly.
It was
I don't
described
know
as
where-
somewhat of an emergency.
Yes, it was an emergency.
More than likely, then, it was a fence that would prevent kids from going towards
It was,
Metro
he was
North.
definitely concerned with children getting hurt or adults getting hurt. I don't know exactly where it was, though,
Okay,
unfortunately.
I'll look into it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions on the warrant?
Move adoption of the warrant.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? And the warrant is approved.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right, we've got the minutes of June 4th, 18th, 20, and 25th, and the minutes of July 9th. We weren't all here at all of those, so we'll take them one by one.
Motion to approve minutes of June 4th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
Abstain.
Please note 2 abstentions
Oh.
for,
Abstain, sorry.
3
trying to find them.
abstentions for the record. It would be the deputy mayor and trustees Spiro and Scaglione. Oh, we don't have, yeah, we need 4, sorry. All right, then your motion is out of order. How's that, Counselor? No, it's not out of order. It failed. How's that? Failed, okay. All right, so we will.
For the record, we'll say that it failed for lack of a quorum.
That's what I meant to say, thank you. All right, so we'll try this, no, we won't.
Can't do that one
Can't do
either.
We'll
that one either.
skip to the 20, no, we won't.
Can't do that one.
And we'll skip to,
Nope.
no, we won't. All right, so, moving along
Nope.
to my announcements, which I won't skip. Just a couple of them. First up, a happy one, and that is that I have a note that our own police officer, Greg Lobato, is a new dad, and I think more importantly, Elizabeth is a new mom. They have a son, Dylan, and mom and baby boy are doing fine, from what we understand. So really glad to hear that about for both of them, and our congratulations to Elizabeth and to Greg. It's dinner time, so I don't know why you're here. I mean, it's many places dinner time, but Friday night, it will be dinner time again, and the food trucks will be back down by the lighthouse at Lighthouse Landing. This past Friday, we had food trucks there, and the lighthouse was open for tours, and the trucks were out there. There was a pretty good crowd. It's actually possible to drive down there. I walked over through Kingsland. It was a really really, really nice night. They'll be back again this Friday, the 19th. And this Friday, it's going to be at least a truck called Pow Burger, which I'm assuming is burgers of some kind. But if it's anything like last Friday, it should be really fun and great. So if you want to, I think the best way is just to walk down there. You get to walk along the river. It's pretty great. Or you can come down Beekman and drive out close to the lighthouse and park on the Edge on Hudson site, and they've opened that up. So we thank them again for that, and I look forward to seeing you there on Friday night. It's going to be really hot, so might as well be outside. All right, I'm going to move on. Are you going to do Mr. Giaccio's report? He was, unfortunately, had to step away.
I'm sorry, there is no report.
Great, okay. Thank you.
Don't we have a softball game on Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna announce that.
Wow.
With my announcement.
I am so
Okay,
sorry.
Good, good.
Stealing,
As long as you're
stealing
covering
her
it. Okay,
thunder.
thanks.
That was, I apologize.
Well,
That's,
got you covered.
yeah.
Well, good.
But we should say it now. Boomer Esiason, as the noted former quarterback, former, I would say, really good, if not great quarterback, has been doing a fundraiser for at least 3 years now, I think.
This will be the fourth.
The fourth, and softball game. He takes on the commissioner of baseball, has his own team as well, and they play against each other at DeVries Park. It's a really great evening. I urge you all to get out there and enjoy the evening at DeVries. You want to add in?
Yeah, a couple things. Boomer's part of the WFAN team. So he's got some professional athletes and other members of the talent that many people listen to at WFAN. JP Doyle's is the key driver here. They put on a great event and make it fun for everybody. And a lot of money is raised for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And it's a very special organization. They do amazing things. And so not only will you have fun if you're there, but you'll be supporting a great cause. And it's a great night for Sleepy Hollow, and hopefully everybody who's free on Thursday night will make their way down to DeVries. Just one last thing. What's the time where the event starts and people should come?
The event kicks off at 6:30.
Which, if you'd said it into the microphone, would be?
Yes, the event kicks off at 6:30, and I think the game starts at 7.
Terrific. And we're going to have a little bit of a cold spell on Thursday night, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, low 90s.
Okay, good.
Great. We look forward to seeing you all out there. All right, we're going to move on to department head reports. First up is Public Works, Mr. Ballard.
Good evening. We start off with our concrete bidding. We first went out to bid, and we didn't get a very good response from the concrete bidders. What was happening out there is the economy is doing so well that everybody was too busy. So what we did was we issued an addendum and said, we welcome you back. Let's keep the bids alive. They're due on Friday, and we pushed off the work until October, which is a slower time for the season for them, and it's no big deal for us. We got our bids in for the paving. As we know, we've had some discussions about that. That's on for tonight. The Incabod's bulkhead, on Tuesday, there was an inspection done as well on Friday. And we got the results back, and the extent of the holes in the sheeting is now at 135, so it's pretty much a consistent band across where the tidal zone is. But equally troubling was the fact that they did some ultrasound testing of how thick the piles are at the mud line where it's driven into the ground. And at some locations, it's almost 65% loss. So with that, you really can't load anything behind it, and we're looking at now replacing the bulkhead. So I did some preliminary work with McLaren Engineers. The permit process, if you were to start on it today, would be a 6 to 9 month process. To build it would be 3 to 6 months. What style that you want to build, that's up to you. I mean, there's 3 or 4 alternatives that have been proposed to the board. To get us to bid documents would be about a $35,000 to $38,000 fee to a consultant, and the permitting would cost about $17,000. So with that, I know that Anthony is working very hard on grants, so we'll see what that brings. Interestingly, we had an inspection called upon by the Westchester Department of Health at Kingsland Park regarding tanks. And thank goodness the staff up here did a great job to find out that in the lease agreement, we're not responsible for the tanks. So, but I went ahead and got them some quotes as to what it would take to take out an old oil tank and an old gasoline tank and forwarded to them. The thing that the county failed to address in this week or two of corresponding with them was a replacement of the heating oil tank in order to keep us going at the park. So what I recommended to them was to put an inside above-ground storage tank with a remote fill, easy to maintain. So now they have all those numbers, and they're digesting that right now. I was asked to provide a mill and fill cost with regards to the train station. We took care of that. I was asked by Larry Lee to take a look at the removal of a tower off the Union Firehouse. Apparently it's leaning. We got some quotes in on that. Mount Pleasant is in town. They're striping our roads. Our own DPW is moving forward with pavement markings on crosswalks and parking stalls. The department planted 6 trees at DeVries and 2 at Horan's Landing. 43 Elm Street, we started doing a water service today. 23 Andrews Lane, we trimmed the tree for the residents over there. We started replacing a water valve on Broadway. This was what's needed in order to increase the pressure for Edge on Hudson. There have been numerous meetings going back and forth with the east and west parcel with regards to storm and sewer and water main installation. The Eastview water transmission thing is moving forward. They're really just doing some light right now site work. They're digging test pits to confirm that where the line's going to go, and they expect the full blown to be moving forward in the next couple of weeks. Hudson Valley Bridge and Wharf project is now moving that you can actually see things. Before this, it was really a lot of inside or underground work. I've included a couple of photographs to show what's going on over there. We had some notification from New York State DOT with regards to Route 9 near 311 North Broadway regarding some cavitation in the roadway. We had to put some emergency plates out there. It's the result of the state's drainage system that they're asking us to take care of, and I'm working with that with Anthony. So we're trying to move forward with regards to what is the scope of work that's needed to rectify that problem. I've met with the Phillips Manor Association on a couple times, mostly to discuss the triangles off of Route 9. I'm continuing to assist the residents over at Hunter Avenue with regards to their drainage work. I've worked with the Climate Smart Task Force, helping them with some more data to obtain their goals. We're working with the 126 Valley to replace their old water meter over there. Douglas Park, we just received the borders in today, and we're going to continue moving the chips into the area. Kayak Park is just about done from DPW. All we're doing right now is installing the fence. Next step would be to put the actual rack up. And tonight, should you pass the resolutions, Edwin, Pedro, and Frank are here to say hello to you. So with that, if anybody has any questions?
Yeah, so Wayne, as far as the Ichabod's bulkhead goes, do you know what the cost difference might be between a flat bulkhead, like what is there now, and putting in riprap?
I think the riprap was like 1.8 million, and then the high end to put back what's there now was 2.5 million.
Okay.
And then there was another one with riprap with a dock going out and some pier that you can push a boat to, that was an in-between number.
Okay.
So everybody's, I think, once you think about what you want, and then maybe we can have some presentations as to what looks like and what you want what the cost will be, so.
And then also, and maybe this is a question for us and not Wayne, but as far as the speed humps go that have been requested, do we know where we are on that now? Do we still need to discuss it, or is it something Anthony was talking to you about?
No, what happened was, a lot of the villages and towns have adopted a program.
Right.
And I know that a whole bunch of people, me, Sean, Anthony, reviewed it. I like the program. I think it's smart. It was in a couple of places that I had worked at. And I think it's a matter of just the board passing that's your program. So when somebody comes in, you have a petition, 75% of the people, do traffic counts and do it the right way, as opposed to just putting them here and there.
Okay.
So I think that's,
What I would suggest is that we review that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on. I would just put that on for the next work session
Yeah, great.
and go from there.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I just had a question. The triangles that you're talking about
Hmm.
off of Route 9, are you talking about the street? Where are you talking about exactly?
like at Palmer and Fremont, those
What's-
little triangles that direct the
Sure.
traffic.
Yeah, what's
There's-
going on
there's-
with those?
There's a question of, can they look more presentable, and should they be uniform going forward? And then what kind of plantings should be there so there's no line of sight issues and it could survive? They're asking me to first find out if water can be supplied to the triangles. They
Mm.
can. And now the question is, well, how much will that cost?
Mm-hmm.
So they're asking me for these numbers, and that's what I've been working on.
Excuse
Oh, I
me.
see.
Bless you.
Okay, God bless you. Okay, once that's identified, can we see some of the plans?
Yeah, I think
Because
that's,
how many triangles are there?
I think 9.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there a line of sight issue with people coming out of
Well,
it?
we took care of all the line
there?
of sight issues right now.
Oh, okay,
But we don't want to put something back there that would create one.
sure.
Yeah. So it's like a conversation that everybody's having right now as to what it should look like and who's going to pay for it, and funding and things like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And for Douglas Park, who's actually moving those, the pile of wood chips?
The DPW
Okay,
on off days, yeah.
So-
We've jumped in on so many projects to save a
know.
lot of money. I mean, like on the streetlights, we actually did all the blacktop.
okay.
That was like a $50,000 savings.
Mm-hmm,
So on the chips, when we have downtime, we move the equipment in there and we shuttle
Okay.
up the hill. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank
thanks.
you for doing that. That's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for your
sir.
time.
Wayne.
Rich, excuse me, sorry, Mr. D'Alessandro, and the Sleep Hollow Ambulance Corps. It's good to see you here.
Good evening to everyone. So last month, we had 62 calls. 11 of them were over the 10-minute response time we want. 51 of them were within the time frame that we strive for. In your report, you'll see the response times that are there with the wheel on the bottom that breaks it down for you. We also gave you the per time of day that the calls are happening, so you can review it. And then finally is the breakdown of where the patient was taken and when the calls happened. We are having one issue right now with the ambulance. One of our ambulances has been out of service now for 2 months at the Ford dealership. It's a brand-new ambulance. So at this point, I've spoken to the town clerk, and we're going to ask that the attorneys get involved and try to push this along. They're saying that they're waiting on some device to test what's wrong with a portion of the ambulance. There's 3 pieces that may be bad, or one of the 3 pieces, and they don't want to replace all 3. They just want to wait for this machine, and it's not available. They haven't, wherever it is, it's not here in the United States yet, or they haven't developed it. And now for 2 months, our ambulance has been sitting in their Schultz Ford, and we can't use it. So we had to go to Ossining and borrow one of theirs, and now insure that so that we can have a second ambulance in case we get a call. I think it's ridiculous. I really do. It's a brand-new ambulance, and so I'd like the attorney to get involved and write Schultz of Ford a letter and Ford International and say, fix our ambulance, give it back to us. This is ridiculous. I mean, it's, now if the other one has an issue, we won't have a backup. So, I mean, I don't mind a reasonable amount of time. I think we've passed that. So, with the board's permission, I'd like to get the attorney involved and have him write a letter to Schultz Ford and Ford International and put them on notice that we want our ambulance back. That if they can't get the machine that they need to test it, then replace all 3 parts and put it back in service and give it back to us so that we can get back on the road. So that's important. We procured an ice machine for the fire rehab, so if there's now a fire, a big fire, we were able to have ice water there for them and ice packs so that they can cool down, and if we have to replenish it, we can take the gator and run back and forth to the building and refill it. So that's going to be a big help for the fire department because we don't have one currently big enough to do this. So any department that needs ice for any event that they're doing, are more than welcome to come down and get it. It's there. So we've been upgrading some more systems. We just extended a couple warranties and actually had to use them. So thank God one of them, they want to charge $1,000 just to come look at it. And now it's covered under warranty. So it was our chest compression machine. One of them's broken, and that was $18,000. So they're coming out this week to look at it and get it fixed. Other than that, everything's running pretty smooth for us. I mean, other than we got to get this ambulance resolved. I've spoken to Specialty, who we bought the ambulance from, and they're willing to take it back and look at it. But the issue becomes is it's under warranty. And if we send it to Specialty, we're going to have to pay for it to get fixed. And we have to have Solaski pick it up and across the river and drive it all the way out to Long Island on the flatbed. So there's a big expense. But that's another option. So at first, I'd like to see if you can rattle a cage or two and get them to resolve it on their own so that we don't have to pay for it. We have the upcoming triathlon again. And we have the triathlon we just did. And we will be at the softball game for any assistance they need. We'll have a crew on standby. So, and any other events that are coming up, we'll handle. Any
great.
questions?
I'm sure council will follow up as per your request regarding the ambulance, and I'm glad that you explained the ice machine, which I would not have thought of as a piece of emergency equipment, but that was a really good explanation, and I'm sure, hopefully, our fire department won't have to have another big active fire.
I hope.
But
recently, we've been very busy, so
yeah,
that was the reasoning behind it. We're like, we just haven't been able to supply them with, the stuff they need to cool down after wearing all that gear and all that heat. So this will go a long way to help that.
I'm sure it'll be
Them getting
appreciated.
overheated.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. There's a real range here in terms of response time. So I'm just wondering what the key factors are that determines whether you can get there within 2 minutes or 10 minutes. Does it have to do with time of day and personnel?
It does
at
have to do
hand?
with time of day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Don't forget, we have the paid EMT there, so we just need a driver. At night, most people are coming from home in their personal cars. The EMT now can take the fly car home with him and then respond either to the scene or the building.
Mhm.
What I've done now is the ambulance corps itself has paid for an Xbox to have at the building, and we're going to be looking to procure a PlayStation to bring the people to the building and have the kids hang out there. And then this way, when the call comes in, they're already at the building. And we're trying to do more things to bring them to hang out at the building versus being at home and then leaving from home. Because it takes, some of these guys live in Pleasantville, you know, and it takes longer for them to get here. So we're trying to do things that brings them here and keeps them here for a while, and they hang out at the building more.
So as far as the destination is concerned, it's either Phelps or Westchester County.
Those are the two main hospitals.
And how is the decision made as to where they go?
Usually the EMT or the paramedic will make that decision, depending on their need. If they're class 1 trauma, they automatically won't go to Phelps. They go automatically to Westchester. If they're an EDP, which is a mostly disturbed person, and they're under 18, they can't go to Phelps. They have to go to Westchester. So there's some requirements by the state that require us to bring them there. Then if someone makes a request to go somewhere besides there, White Plains or Dobbs Ferry, then they have to call me and I have to approve it because I don't like to take the ambulance too far out of town. So like we've had requests to go down the city, and I'm like, no, you're going to go here or get your own transportation. So we try to keep it to one of the two hospitals. But the paramedic, if he decides they have to go to Northern Westchester for some reason, that's where their doctor is, and then we may have to take him there. So ultimately the paramedic would make that call, or the EMT on the call, make the call of where they're going.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Deanna Loha, our community liaison.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to give you some updates of the projects that I've been working and some projects that I already have done. One of the projects that we started and it became a very community thing was, and it became a community united to get the community together, was the Horsemen Soccer Tournament that started they had the kickoff on June 23rd and is going to end in August 25th. The mayor, Mr. Wright, came in and supported us that. The people in the community were very welcome and glad to have you there. Actually, they were happy that you did the first kickoff to start the soccer, the soccer tournament. Basically the purpose of the soccer tournament is to have the community united, especially in the summer, especially when the kids are out of school. This tournament for soccer is from the age from 10 to 16 for young adults, and as well as for adults and women's. We do have at least more than 15, 20 teams combined between kids and adults, and they're from the residents here from the community, from the village of Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown, and as well as from other ends for White Plains that they join us to there. It takes place every Sunday in the morning, and we want to thank you especially to Matthew Aaron, who helped us a lot to support with that, and as well as to the Washington Elementary School, because that's where it's taking place in the lower field. The other project that we're working on is in the Sleepy Hollow Festival Culture, still in process. We still have a deadline for July 31st for the vendors and as well as the sponsors to respond to us. While that happens, we'll be getting a lot of great response from the community. We have, for the performance, we're trying to have the organizations when the community participate. I do have a lot of community organizations that we do in performance at no cost. They're very excited to participate on that, and as well as other vendors. In terms of volunteers, we have a really good response in terms of volunteers for residents. We're working with the schools for volunteers, and as well as the going forward, the EF Education First in Tarrytown is willing to participate and have volunteers for any community events that they're willing to participate, and some of them they're going to participate in this event. But they're willing to participate in the future community events in case we need volunteers. So I'm working very close with Lisa Wilkerson, who's actually going to be doing in terms of community. Also, we're working, also want to make a special announcement for starting July 22nd. We're going to have the newspaper street standards That's the first Hispanic newspaper here in West, that we're going to start here in Sleepy Hollow. The newspaper is called the Pluma Libre News. To give you a little bit background of the newspaper, is actually the oldest Hispanic publication in Westchester County, doing business since 2003. It's the only Hispanic publication that they publish every week, weekly announcements. They're part of the member of the New York Press Association. They intern for the community. They're willing to make any announcements that we have for the public in terms of the Village of Sleepy Hollow, any announcements of any department here in the Department of Recreation or any department here that we want to make an announcement for the community. They're going to have five newspaper boxes. We're going to locate them in Cortlandt Street and College Avenue, next to the bus station. The other location is going to be taking place in North Washington Street and Beekman Avenue, as well as next to the bus station. North Broadway and Gordon Avenue, next to the Sleepy Hollow Animal Hospital. We also have the Beekman Avenue and Broadway, which is going to be here next to the Village Hall building. And so that's where the standards are going to be making it. Also, we want to make it also for the announcement. Also, we want to mention that as September, we're going to go back again to the workshops for the community again. I already have created a calendar for at least to have at least every 8 weeks some type of workshop to cover for the community. The first one we're going to start in September 16, every Wednesday. And the first one we're going to talk about is finance. We do have a specific person who's going to be more information to come, but we're going to have a specific talking about for the teaching our residents about finance, saving, in terms of teaching our kids how to save since they're little. So that's basically how it's going to talk about some of the stuff. But we're going to have different topics going forward and starting September. Another project that I'm working is with Anthony and as well as with with Danielle and Kathleen with our college interns here. We're working in creating a database of our Sleepy Hollow business, especially our downtown business. We're trying to update all the information. The purpose of this is to keep it updated. I noticed on the database that we have right now since 2006, some of the contact information has not been updated, as well as owners. So I'm working on updating it, and as well as contact information in case for any type of future announcements that we want to involve in our businesses in terms of workshops. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
So the newspaper that you mentioned, that's currently being published all around Westchester County, but has had no distribution in Sleepy Hollow, and that's going to change?
That's correct. They've been through whole Westchester since 2003. They have been some published, actually some of our local businesses here, they already do advertisements here, and what they've been doing is they're just being delivered in a specific, only like bodegas or anything since Hispanic, just local stores. But now we wanted to make it available for every person in the community. So we're going to have the boxes standards. They do already have boxes standards in other locations, like Portchester and other locations. So that's one of the things. And one of the things about this newspaper is they're willing to do any announcements for the community, any concerns or anything like that when they create that. They advertise, obviously they do entertainment, sports, anything in terms of that.
Is it free, or do readers have to pay for it?
It's free, no cost at all for the community. Nope, it's
Great.
free. So people can just really go ahead and grab that.
Excellent.
Any other questions for Deanna? Thank you again.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to public comments. If anyone wishes to address the board, you may do so now. Please be advised that you're restricted to 3 minutes. If you would like to address the board, please use the microphone in the middle of the room. While you're thinking about it, I'll just, yes.
Hello, I'm sorry, I may not speak English, but I need traduction over here. Muy buenas tardes para todos, el pueblo en general.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and public in general.
con todo el respeto que le voy a pedir es de favor acerca de mi nieta.
With all the respect, I'm here to talk about my granddaughter.
Que tuvo el accidente pues el 2 de mayo y todavía está en el hospital. Yo soy el abuelo nomás y el papá no pudo venir porque está con la niña. Yomara.
I'm here in reference to the accident that happened for her Jomaira Chimbo that happened on May 2nd with the street on the car accident, and his father unfortunately couldn't be here, so I'm the grandfather that is supporting his son.
La reuní pues y unas 800 y pico de firmas, pues estaba muy triste y no sé si esto es el primer paso que estoy conociendo al señor alcalde, a todos pues el pueblo en general.
He wants to, the reason he's here is because he had collected 800 signatures from the residents here about the accident of the street that happened when she got a car accident, and he wants to know what happened with the signatures he got in terms of the car accident he had in, and it's the first time he's here meeting the mayor and as well as the trustees.
No quiero que pase ni porque hay papás y mamás, no quiero que pase como pasa. Estoy sufriendo yo pues como abuelo, nomás no se diga como papá.
He's just concerned that this doesn't happen to other kids, and not to be mentioned as the grandfather he suffered. I just imagine what a father or mother has to go through when they see a kid in the hospital.
Y lo que estoy pidiendo de favor es que me pongan pues algo estapas o una luz o una rompe velocidades, yo no sé, pero
I'm here to request to see if there's any possibility that we can put a stop sign or some type of bumper to slow down the speed of the cars on the streets.
hace 2 semanas que estábamos viniendo 3 personas, mi casa es en la 29 Barjar y estaba viniendo la semana pasada, pues 3 personas casi nos atropellaron a nosotros 3.
I own a house in 29 Barhart Street, and then last 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was just walking there, and there's cars with a high speed limit. They came in, but they almost hit us. So they almost.
Que no ven los stop signs, y yo no sé por qué, yo también soy chofer, pero siempre me manejo con todo cuidado, pero la gente no sé, la juventud de este año qué es lo que pasa.
The driver is, I don't know, and he's also, I'm a driver myself, and there's a lot of young kids driving, and I don't know if the stop signs are not visible or why there's so much speed on the streets.
Hay muchos niños que ahorita están pues en el verano ahí en el parque, justamente que quieren pasar a la tienda a comprar cualquier cosa y no pueden pasar porque los carros corren mucho.
Especially now, there's so many kids on the street due to the summer. They're trying to cross the street for the stores, and the speed is higher, and I'm very concerned about them.
Eso nomás lo que pido de favor, pues ahorita que estoy aquí, pues a todas las autoridades presentes que están aquí, pues que tomen la carta en el asunto.
That's all I'm asking, and obviously, since you're the authorities, and he wants to make sure to please look into it.
Y muchas gracias.
And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to address the board? I would just remind you that we have a second time in our meeting and all of our regular board meetings where, towards the end, where you can address the board on anything you wish to cover. So if somebody would like to come back later, then look forward to that. If there's no one else, we'll move on to resolutions. I would just say earlier in the meeting, we had discussed looking at a speed bump or speed hump policy, which we're going to be doing next week. And this will certainly fall within the general territory of that discussion, and I expect that we'll take it up next week. So, Deanna, if you could please pass that on. Okay, thank you.
What's the cross street, just so we can be looking at it before the work
We'll
session?
just make sure we have every.
Could we,
we'll
beforehand?
Get from the chief and other things, okay?
Okay.
All right, we have many resolutions, some of which are of great interest to people in this room. Okay, so you're not interested. God, I can't get a rise out of you guys. All right, that's better. All right, somebody want to take the first one?
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow authorizing kayak rack rules and regulations. Whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow Board of Trustees is desirous of renting out the kayak storage rack at Horan's Landing. And whereas Recreation Superintendent Matt Arone has recommended that the Village Board adopt the attached rules and regulations for the kayak storage rack at Horan's Landing. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow adopts the attached rules and regulations for the kayak storage rack at Horan's Landing. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow authorizing EMS agreement. Whereas pursuant to New York State law, the village may contract with independent contractors for the furnishing of emergency services to or for the village or any department thereof. And whereas the village's emergency medical services, Sleepy Hollow EMS, is an entirely volunteer village organization that provides ambulance services to the village in certain areas within the town of Mount Pleasant. And whereas the village's Board of Trustees evaluated the contractor's proposal, qualifications, experience, and cost, and have determined that awarding the contract to the Mid-Hudson EMS District and the Ossining Volunteer Ambulance Corps, OVAC, are in the best interest of the village. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accepts the Mid-Hudson EMS District proposal for the provision of emergency medical technicians and authorizes the village administrator, Anthony Giacchio, to sign a contract with Mid-Hudson Ambulance District, care of Town of Ossining, located at 16 Croton Avenue, Ossining, New York, 10562, for the payment amount that is stated in the attached contract. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow to authorize mayor to sign the ambulance service agreement with the Mount Pleasant West Ambulance District for 2019. Whereas the town of Mount Pleasant has requested that the Sleepy Hollow Volunteer Corps service, Whereas the town of Mount Pleasant has requested that the Sleepy Hollow Volunteer Corps service the Mount Pleasant West Ambulance District. And whereas the town of Mount Pleasant agrees to pay the sum of $8,111 per year for this service as outlined in the attached agreement. And now be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the mayor and/or the village administrator to sign the attached ambulance service agreement with the town of Mount Pleasant West Ambulance District, subject to the approval by village council. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow awarding paving bid. Whereas the village duly solicited bids to pave certain streets in the village, and whereas ELQ Industries, Inc. of New Rochelle, New York, has been identified as the low bidder with a bid amount of $493,223.76. And whereas all bids have been reviewed by Dolph Rockfeld Engineering, who determined this bid to be acceptable and has recommended its approval, and whereas funds has been allocated in the CHIPS budget and from Con Edison, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees herein accepts the bid from ELQ Industries, Inc. of New Rochelle, New York, to pave certain streets in the village at a total bid amount of $493,223.76. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just kind of, could we explain a little bit more what the CHIPS budget represents?
CHIPS money is funds that we get from the state that are road-related and restricted to that.
Okay.
So what this resolution represents is the culmination of a negotiation between Wayne Ballard and Con Edison that resulted in Con Edison, when they tear up a road, they repave the part that they tore up.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times the other half of the road or the street will be messed up because of the work, even though they repaved. And Mr. Ballard realized that he had some leverage on Con Ed and used that to the village's advantage to say, wait a minute, why don't you, we're going to get a bid, there's probably a really good one, and why don't you give us the money that you would have been spending on repaving, and so that we could repave the entire road from curb to
Fantastic.
curb.
Wow.
So it was a good opportunity for us.
Great,
to do
thank you
this.
for that explanation.
Is
And thank
that-
you, Wayne.
Kudos, Mr. Ballard.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The resolution's approved.
Okay. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approving grant application. Whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby requests financial assistance from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, EPFLWRP, to repair the bulkhead at Ichabod Landing. And whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow certifies that it has identified and secured $500,000 of matching funds from its capital budget pursuant to the requirements of the grant program. Now therefore be it resolved, the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby authorizes Anthony Giacchio, Village Administrator, and if an official or employee to act on its behalf in submittal of an application through the consolidated funding application for $500,000 to be used for the Ichabod bulkhead repairs. So moved.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approving grant application. Whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow and the Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation are financing a project known as Sleepy Hollow Commons on the east parcel of the former General Motors site. And whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby requests financial assistance from the New York State Climate Smart Communities Grant Program pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law, Article 54, Title 15. And whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow certifies that it has identified $2 million of matching funds, which funds are expected to be issued by the Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation pursuant to the requirements of Environmental Conservation Law, Article 54, Title 15. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Sleepy Hollow Board of Trustees hereby authorizes submission of a Climate Smart Communities application through the Consolidated Funding Application requesting $2 million in grant funds to advance the Sleepy Hollow Commons project. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approving grant application. Whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby requests financial assistance from Market, New York to be used for the Washington Irving Bicentennial Celebration. And whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow certifies that it has identified and secured $80,000 of matching funds from its capital budget pursuant to the requirements of the grant program. Now therefore be it resolved, the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby authorizes Anthony Giacchio, Village Administrator, an official or employee to act on its behalf in submittal of an application through the consolidated funding application for $180,000 to be used for the Washington Irving Bicentennial Celebration. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approving grant application. The Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby requests financial assistance from the New York State Climate Smart Communities Grant Program pursuant to Environmental Conservation Law, Article 54, Title 15, to achieve bronze-level Climate Smart certification. And whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow certifies that it has identified and secured $10,000 of matching funds from its operating budget pursuant to the requirements of the grant program. Now therefore be it resolved, the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby authorizes Anthony Giacchio, Village Administrator, an official or employee, to act on its behalf in submittal of an application through the Consolidated Funding Application for $10,000 to be used to achieve bronze level climate smart certification. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstentions? The resolution's approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow appointing laborer position in the Department of Public Works. Whereas there is an opening in the Department of Public Works for a full-time laborer position, and whereas the position has been properly posted and advertised, and whereas Public Works Superintendent Wayne Ballard conducted several interviews for this position, and whereas Mr. Ballard has recommended Edwin, help me with the last name. Zinnin of Sleepy Hollow, New York, for the position of laborer in the Department of Public Works. Now be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approved the mayor's appointment of Edwin Zinnin of Sleepy Hollow, New York, to the position of full-time laborer at an annual salary of $70,059.48, effective July 17th, 2019. And be it further resolved that there will be a 30-month period in which Mr. Zinnin will only receive 90% of his annual salary, $63,053.53, per the collective bargaining agreement, Article 4, Section 2, and all other terms and conditions of the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Sleepy Hollow and Local 456 International Brotherhood of Teamsters shall apply. And be it further resolved that said appointment is subject to the approval of the Westchester County Department of Human Resources and a probationary period of 12 to 52 weeks. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The resolution is approved. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, prove us all right, okay?
All right.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow appointing laborer position in the Department of Public Works. Whereas there is an opening in the Department of Public Works for a full-time laborer position, and whereas the position has properly been posted and advertised, and whereas Public Works Superintendent Wayne Ballard conducted several interviews for this position. Whereas Mr. Ballard has recommended Pedro Elnesquez of Sleepy Hollow, New York, for the position of laborer in the Department of Public Works. Now be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approve the mayor's appointment of Pedro Elnesquez of Sleepy Hollow, New York, to the position of full-time laborer of an annual salary of $70,059.48, effective July 29, 2019. And be it further resolved that there will be a 30-month period in which Mr. Elnesquez will only receive 90% of his salary, $63,052.53, per the collective bargaining agreement, Article 4, Section 2, and all other terms and conditions of the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Sleepy Hollow and the Local 456 International Brotherhood of Teamsters shall apply. And be it further resolved that said appointment is subject to the approval of the Westchester County Department of Human Resources and a probationary period of 12 to 52 weeks. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The resolution is approved.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow appointing part-time laborer position in the Department of Public Works. Whereas there is an opening in the Department of Public Works for a part-time laborer position, and whereas the position has been properly posted and advertised, and whereas Public Works Superintendent Wayne Ballard conducted several interviews for this position, and whereas Mr. Ballard has recommended Frank DiPolito of White Plains, New York, for the position of part-time laborer in the Department of Public Works. Now be it resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow approves the mayor's appointment of Frank DiPolito of White Plains, New York, to the position of part-time laborer at an hourly rate of $16, not to exceed more than 29 hours per week, effective July 29, 2019. And be it further resolved that said appointment is subject to the approval of the Westchester County Department of Human Resources and a probationary period of 12 to 52 weeks. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The resolution's approved. Welcome,
to all of you.
Frank. Welcome, Pedro.
Pedro.
I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to work with us. I appreciate all your help. It's very simple. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that the folks in DPW are looking forward to all of you being there and being fully staffed, or at least we think fully staffed. You may not, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right, I don't want to hear anything from the chief either, okay? So it just, but no, we're looking forward to all of you coming on board and look forward to many, many years of you guys working for the village, probably long after we're gone. But good to have you on. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
All right.
Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow authorizing salary adjustment for employee. Whereas employee Joan Bucci has been employed full-time by the village as deputy clerk since June 1st, 2015, whereas the job responsibilities for her position have increased significantly since she was hired by the village, and whereas the Board of Trustees believes it would be fair and equitable to increase Joan Bucci's salary to be commensurate with her increased job duties. Now therefore be it resolved, the Mayor and Board of Trustees hereby increases the annual base salary of Joan Bucci to $63,060.41, effective July 10th, 2019. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? And the resolution's approved. All right, that completes our resolutions for the evening. Is there any old business or new business? While you're thinking about that, Ms. McCarthy-Tompkins, you got any petitions or communications?
Yes, to reiterate the event for Thursday, there is a $10 admission to DeVries. It does start at 6:30 is the national anthem, and then 7 p.m. will be the first pitch. But there is a $10 admission. I just wanted the public to know that. If it rains and it's canceled, we will announce a future date, okay? The other thing is I received a liquor license, liquor, wine, and beer license for El Mango Bar located at 134 Cortlandt Street. That has been forwarded to the building inspector and the police chief. And our mobile shredder was, again, a huge success. It's like the most popular event in all of Sleepy Hollow. Everybody comes out.
Next to the passports.
Oh, yeah, when is that happening? I need
You missed it.
I need it again.
So they were here Saturday. They'll be back in November. But I'll remind everybody.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
If there's no old business and new business, I'll move on to public comments. Does anyone wish to address the board? Hearing no one, can I get a motion? Sorry?
Yo le he comentado a la Dianita acerca de las firmas y de la gente que no pueden venir para acá.
Since obviously the short time, he just had one thing. He had previously called me and commented about the signatures, about how there's other people that they would love to come in from the community to talk to you. Unfortunately, he had people, some are afraid of the community to come in to the village hall, especially what's going on with immigration and everything. Somehow they're afraid to do that. The main point of what he's trying to do, and just to make clear things, is with the stop signs and the bumpers, there's anything that the community can do and help you achieve this goal. that's his here, what he's here. Is there anything from the community that we can do? He just wants to make sure that they're aware, they're willing to participate or anything, or volunteer anything that they're willing to do in order to change that and to keep the street safe.
Thank you, sir.
Eso es todo lo que quería decir, nada más.
That's all.
And Deanna, just make sure that you have, you forward his contact information to the clerk, so if we have follow-up, it'll make it easier to reach out, okay? Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn meeting?
Seconded.
Seconded, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you and good night, ladies and gentlemen.